Hey everyone, my name's Kara Jones and today I will be presenting on chapter 15, which is video games. I know that growing up, I was an only child, so I played video games a lot as a child, and I'm happy that I'm able to present on this topic because I got to learn some new information and I also got to relive my years growing and getting new video game consoles. So I hope you learned just as much as I did reading this chapter, and feel free to follow along in the PowerPoint as we discuss different topics. We're going to be going over the definition of video games, we're going to go over the chronology, the 5 different generations, we're going to talk about some recent developments, its current status, and some questions that I have for you guys regarding video games and their different consoles. Let's start with the first slide of how to define video games. From our book, we see that it's a catch-all term. This usually refers to both video and audio stimulus, which is played through some type of digital mean. It could be the phone or computer you're watching this video on right now. It could be the laptop, it could be a TV, anything of that nature. The game system has a couple different parts to it. It will normally have a display, its microprocessor, the game software, and some type of input device. And these devices are available in generally 3 different systems. It could be a digital system, like that home computer or mobile phone or tablet that generally everyone has, a standalone system like an arcade game, or software-specific games or platforms. Our next 2 slides are going to be about the video game chronology, or those 5 different generations. Now it's important to mark that these years are very rough because some of the generations overlap, but we're going to talk about it in broad terms. So starting with the early years, 1960. First of all, 1960, I can't believe it's just, 50 years ago, 60 years ago that we're talking about the start of video games. It seems crazy to me. But Ralph Baer is an important person to know of the early years. He really helped, him and his team helped develop these video game projects at the beginning for the Department of Defense. And then he developed the game called Chase, which is the first video game credited with the ability to display on a standard TV set. That was huge back then. Then the game Pong from Nolan Bushnell's Atari came out, which was the first home video game. The rise of consoles, as many of us had consoles back in the day, was from roughly 1977 to 1990. This was the integration of home video gaming with other media licenses. They normally had tie-ins from popular movies and arcade games, movies such as E.T. and arcade games such as Pac-Man. The Atari 2600 led home sales, and especially when it was able to insert cartridges of different games. So you just had one gaming system and could get your cartridge. We all know the little block cartridge. You would just put it in and you were able to play all different games. That led the sales, and then in the mid-1980s, the launch of the Sega Master System and the NES, or Nintendo Entertainment Systems, was huge and it broke records. A lot of us know the character Mario, which actually came from Donkey Kong, the game. So we are now having characters from different games building their own empires in this rise of console generation. Moving on to the next slide. Our 3rd generation is portable gaming, starting about roughly the 1980s. Lynx handheld system from Atari released in 1987. Then 2 years later, we had the Game Boy Nintendo. A year after that, Sega's Game Gear was released. So those are just 3 really important portable gaming systems from back then. Again, this was about roughly 1980 to 2005. Now in 2018, we still have handheld gaming, but we're going to talk about some of the more persuasive gaming consoles later. The 4th generation is the console wars, starting in 1990. That is still going on, that's why it's marked present. 1995, only a year after I was born, is the Sony PlayStation release. Now, personally, this was the first console that I had, so this one's near and dear to my heart. Then in 2001, the introduction of the Xbox came alive. Then in 2006, we had the Nintendo Wii. Something very important to talk about the Wii is it had a large audience due to its motion-censored remotes. This is a time when you had a remote and the sensor was right there at your TV. So everyone was able to play this, from little kids to even the elderly. So this had a wide market range. Our fifth and final generation is our persuasive online and mobile gaming. As a millennial myself, this is one that I can relate to the most because I play a lot of role-playing games, and I obviously, as I'm recording this on my phone, use my phone a lot. So this has multiplayer online playing games such as World of Warcraft, which was launched in 2004. At a single moment, it can have up to 10 million subscribers at once, and these are all players that are able to interact with each other and talk to each other via headset and things of that nature. So this is just an example of our 5 generations of video games. Moving on to some recent developments. We do have 5 recent developments similar to our 5 generations. Starting with the first one is crowdfunding, one that I find very interesting. They were having to sell the game to make the money. Their phrase was vote with their dollars. So actually audience members were able to give money up front to different platforms and able to have these games released even faster. The game creators were able to specify target goals based on their fundraising campaigns. And these platforms varied. Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and Steam Greenlight were just 3 different platforms used for this. Another development is social gaming, where your friends help you play the game. This not only encourages social interactions, but it nearly requires it to fully experience the game. Examples of this would be Farmville 2 and Candy Crush, where via Facebook you're able to send invites to your friends, and your friends can help you collect sources and other things needed for the game where you can have the full experience. Moving on to our next slide, something very serious to note is our regulatory environment, continuing legislative efforts to protect the children. From 2012, the unfortunate shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School, they were trying to see if there was relations between the shooter and violent video games. Unfortunately, we did not see any links, but that is something that researchers are still trying to see and find out. Is there a link between someone that plays violent video games with a lot of shooting or stabbing or things of that nature with their actual life situations? Then we have innovations in mobile gaming. This is improvements in mobile phones that make it attractive to gamers. I can relate to this on a personal level. Normally, the bigger the screen, more processing time, better picture quality, you're able to play the game a little bit better. This is like immersive reality, where the addition of cameras and QR codes and GPS locators all come into one. An example of this would be the game released in 2016, Pokemon Go. That's when a lot of people were able to come on together, and you had to go to specific locations, talk to different people, and it really immersed you from the game into your own reality. The 5th development is that broadband-enabled download for consoles as well as PCs. And this is just when the console itself is able to download those different games for you to play. Looking at our current statuses, there's really no new platforms from 2006 all the way to 2012. But then all 3 major manufacturers released new hardware from 2013 to 2015. This included Sony's PS4 now, all the way to Xbox One. Some other interesting things to see are gamer parents, that term. These would be parents that had games growing up and are now raising kids with those own consoles. So I'm interested to see if any of you would be considered a gamer parent. The average gamer, in all, is 35 years old with over 12 years of playing experience. Only being 24 myself, I would be below average of a gamer, but I definitely was playing games my whole life, so this was very interesting for me to read. I do have some questions for you guys regarding this whole chapter, and these questions include: how could we incorporate more motion-sensitive games into our society for beneficial use? This really comes from the Wii console. Is there any way that we can use video games to help maybe rehabilitation or people trying to learn a sport or a craft like a musical instrument? How could we do that? And then my other question is, how can the church benefit from video game usage? I know that video games and church don't really come together all that often, but is there a way that we can use video games to help tell the stories or teach kids different verses of the Bible or things of that nature? I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know I enjoyed reading this chapter, and maybe I'm gonna go play some video games right now. But that's it. Thank you.